that which lies beyond civilization. Eerie.
Last night, I dreamt I went to Mandalay again. It seemed to me I stood by the iron gate leading to the drive, and for a while I could not enter, for the way was barred to me. Then, like all dreamers, I was possessed of a sudden with supernatural powers and passed like a...
So, Rebecca.
So yeah, this comes after our episode on Daphne du Maurier and Christopher Priest, in which Mark Fisher identified du Maurier's work with the failure of absence, and he covered two of her adapted works. The Birds and Don't Look Now. He did not cover Rebecca. Rebecca is a pretty obvious third one to go with, as it was similar to The Birds, also made into a Hitchcock movie. Unlike The Birds, du Maurier apparently enjoyed the adaptation. And I think it's also very, perhaps even more obvious than the two examples he went with as an example of the failure of absence.
Yeah, it's a very eerie film at every level.
Right. And I mean, first and foremost, I think the title.
Yeah. Okay,
the title is named after a woman who is not in the novel, and yet why is her name prominent enough to be the title of the book? So to give a brief summary of, let's say, all the versions generally, the movie is about a young woman whose name we will not learn. A young woman who meets an older, wealthy gentleman from essentially the same part of England, specifically Cornwall, as she is, from a house that, she knew about this house because it was, this big palatial estate around her town. He's a guy from that family. They have a romance. They end up getting married. She moves back to Mandalay, which is the name of the house, with him. It comes up that he had a wife who passed away.
It comes up a lot.
Her name is Rebecca. When the topic is brought up to him, he gets distant and somber and changes the subject. The maid, Mrs. Danvers, at the estate, has this worshipful infatuation with Rebecca and constantly is prodding the new Mrs. De Winter, or our protagonist, with comparisons to her, how she doesn't live up to this high level of standard that the former woman did. The protagonist, of course, is from a lower social class, so there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a,
You're expected to do things as the woman of this sort of a house, and she doesn't know how to do those things, and Rebecca really knew how to do those things.
Yeah, she was awesome. Everyone around Maxim De Winter, our male protagonist, he has friends over who are also very wealthy, and all they do is talk about the former wife. Right.
There's a east wing of the estate where Rebecca's old bedroom is. It's implied that Mr. De Winter has never set foot in there since her death. It's this big mystery. Eventually she walks in, and Mrs. Danvers takes the opportunity to again berate her for failing these standards, suggests she kill herself, and this all culminates into a party in which Mrs. Danvers tricks the protagonist into dressing up in a costume worn by Rebecca, which draws the ire of her husband and shocks everyone at the party. And eventually what happens is a ship sinks off the shore of Mandalay. In pulling the ship up, they discover the ship in which Rebecca was on that sank, which is how she died. they find a body in there that is Rebecca, which is a problem because Mr. De Winters identified a body that washed up on shore as Rebecca. At this, our protagonist and Mr. De Winter are speaking in confidence, and he informs her, asterisks, depending on the version, that either A, he shot Rebecca, who was actually a horrible wife, or B, Rebecca was a horrible wife, but she tripped and hit her head cartoonishly. Guess which one of those came up in the movie that was controlled by the Hays Code?
Yeah.
But anyway, at this we get this whole plot twist. Actually, Rebecca and Mr. De Winters hated each other. She was constantly cheating on him. And one night she came home teasing Mr. De Winters, claiming that she was going to have another man's child and no one would ever believe him that it wasn't his and that he would have to raise this child as his own. And then she died after that somehow.
Depending on the version.
Depending on the version. And then we get back to all the versions converge and agree that Mr. De Winters then placed her body on a boat, took the boat out into the middle of the, ocean or whatever the fuck, and sank it purposefully, getting back to shore himself, to make it look like she died in a boating accident. So the story ends with them eventually
having a trial,
an inquest into the death, having found this new body, where one of Rebecca's lovers / also cousin, because English nobility, claims that in fact he had a letter that she, quote, visited a doctor and had great news from the doctor. According to this letter, he claims she was pregnant. That's why Mr. De Winters killed him. Mr. De Winters said, I don't know what you're talking about. They then go to the doctor, who hands Mr. De Winters a freebie by informing them that actually she had terminal cancer, thus providing a perfect excuse for her suicide, which is what Mr. De Winters is now apparently claiming. And the happy ending is this man gets away with murdering his wife and marrying a younger woman. And the younger woman is happy because that means that he really does love her and doesn't love Rebecca. And that's an ethically sensible story to 20th century England.
Yeah, it's one of her most famous novels. It came out in 1938, and the film by Hitchcock came out in 1940. And during the time, it was historically significant that she wrote this, because she was with her husband in Alexandria, and he was stationed there as a battalion leader for the English Corps. And yeah, she missed Cornwall, and then everything stemmed, according to her, from her wanting to write about Cornwall. And I think this goes back to something we talked about with Lovecraft, where China Miéville interpreted the weird shift with Lovecraft as being a response to, or a trauma response to, World War I happening. And I think here we can make a light claim that there is some type of trauma or eerie dread that comes in about the Hitler and the imminent invasions of Eastern Europe.
I mean, I guess it's almost a trauma for something that hadn't quite happened yet, but was on the horizon.
Right, the dread. And as Fisher talks about, the eerie is frequently linked with this dread for something that isn't there. And literally, I can't stress this enough, the Hitchcock movie comes out 4 months before the Nazi bombing campaign of London. And The Birds, as we talked about in our episode, was written in 1951 and specifically deals with the trauma of the London bombing campaign. And this sort of almost foreshadows these similar type of eerie shifts that she has in her career.
Yeah, Rebecca was someone else's Color Out of Space. Like, as the last movie they got to see before they had to get what was their COVID at the time, was their city getting bombed.
Yeah, exactly.
There's someone out there that was the last movie they got to see.
And that's the crazy thing about it, is it was such a huge hit. And I don't think it's incidental that the dread and fear of war coming to England didn't coincide with people really responding to this movie.
Yeah, no, and I mean, I think we can get into a lot of themes. I think most of them are going to be feminism.
Queer readings of
Yes,
this.
that too. But certainly there is something to be said. It appears from my learning about Du Maurier that a lot of her work kind of comes from this, general pastoral distaste for the encroachment of, London onto Cornwall. You have this idea of this old style Edwardian period, which is really the tail end of the nobility in England. Palatial estate that's been around since the 1600s literally get burnt down at the end.
Yeah, there's a destruction of the old ways almost, or like the mourning of the old ways in a certain sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of thoughts about mourning inherent in this. I mean, yeah, and I guess this segues into why is it eerie, as we implied. I mean,
like you mentioned the name, but it's even more of an absence within the book than either movie adaptation. Like from the book, in the I think second chapter, this is when Maxim first meets our unnamed protagonist, unnamed, and so he says, "I told you at the beginning of lunch you had a lovely and unusual name. I shall go further if you will forgive me and say that it becomes you as well as it became your father. I've enjoyed this hour with you more than I have enjoyed anything for a long time. You've taken me out of myself, out of the despondency and introspection, both of which have been my devils for a year." And the mere fact that he says, you have a lovely and unusual name, and she never mentions the name.
I think so many of these thematic explorations will be with, let's take a clearly unintended interpretation of this work, at least as far as we can tell from the author's standpoint. But I do like imagining that as from the standpoint of Dolores from Seinfeld, where Jerry is like, "Oh yeah, you have such an unusual name. It rhymes with a female genitalia."
Yeah, I mean, the postmodern takes this idea and makes it a joke. And
right, no,
Seinfeld has
the next line from her would be, "Well, what is my name?" And he goes, "I believe it's Mulva."
She does address this here. She's talking about people who really gravitated to this and how she had put down the novel and then never thought about it again because she was on the move, and then was surprised when everybody was like, this is great. And how when she's done with a novel, she just tries to move on to the next one. And she goes, "This has been more difficult with Rebecca because I continue to receive letters from all over the world asking me what I based the story on and the characters. And why did I never give the heroine a Christian name? The answer to the last question is simple. I could not think of one, and it became a challenge in technique. The easier because I was writing in the first person."
Yeah, sure. I think also it does play a poetic role of the idea that there's a woman whose name is the title who doesn't appear in the book, and then there's a woman who appears in the book who doesn't have a name. But yeah, also maybe she just never got around to thinking of one. But yeah, no, it's a great technique you bumbled onto, I guess, Daphne.
She also says that she changed the name of the male protagonist from Henry to Maxim. And I think that has significance because it kind of places it in like a previous time. Maximilian, or short for Maximilian.
It gives it a...
Henry has like a Henry Ford, or a more modernist, and this kind of dates it pre-modern register. She also does the same thing with age, and so he asked her at one point, "How old are you?" He said, and when I told him, he laughed and got up from his chair. "I know that age. It's a particularly obstinate one, and 1,000 bogeys won't make you fear the future." Again, using a similar technique of giving the information around the information. Like giving a description of the information without giving information.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, again, I think, it gives it this poetic sensibility.
But I also think it
builds
it does a thing that reminds me, like Fisher talks about, when you have characters that have doubles or they have foils, and it, as you said, this is a character without a name, but it's also a character whose presence is almost empty.
Right.
And that presence is then filled by Rebecca's presence, or at least Rebecca's presence encroaches on hers.
Yeah. It is interesting because I saw the movie for the first time. I wasn't aware of the full story all the way through. And I thought it was just about this woman, living in Rebecca's shadow, and eventually, she'd get driven mad or what have you. I did not know about the weird twist.
That he's a murderer.
Yeah, that he killed his ex-wife but
and didn't love her
in an endearing way. It's fine because he didn't love her. Yeah.
Oh, that's so good, Maxim, that you don't love your ex-wife. I thought that's why you were so weird when you were being distant towards me.
Yeah, but anyway, it is like the first 2/3 or however much of the film kind of does make it just seem like this sense of you're just getting crushed under this whole everything around you. It kind of, in a lot of ways, actually reminds me of that one Princess Diana movie that came out that was, famously kind of shot like a horror. I saw it once. I forget what it was called. It was actually kind of good, as much as I hate to admit that subject matter as ever being interesting to me, but I thought it was going to be more just that, where this woman is eventually
Spencer?
Yes, I believe that's correct. Where this woman eventually just gets overwhelmed by this, like, complete outside high status society that eats her alive because she can never be this woman who she's never seen, who she can never live up to. So definitely removing her name certainly helps with that. It's also interesting, though, because we don't want to act like she's a non-character, because apparently that was an issue with Hitchcock's first draft.
So the history behind the writing and screenwriting is they approached Daphne du Maurier to do the screenwriting. Du Maurier was like, "No, I'm traveling with my husband and don't want to deal with you people, so I'll pass on it."
Hollywood types.
Yeah. I fart in your general direction, and so
Selznick sounds like an interesting name of a certain kind of people.
Yeah, a certain religion. I'm not going to say which.
Yes.
But they brought it to a number of different people who all passed on writing it, and then Hitchcock worked with his wife, Alma Hitchcock, assistant Joan Harrison, and British writer Michael Hogan, to produce a 45-page double-spaced storyline, which he submitted to Selznick on June 3rd, 1939. Selznick responded with a lengthy memo describing himself as shocked beyond words and criticizing the way in which the treatment diverged from the source material of the unnamed protagonist. He wrote, "Every little thing that the girl does in the book, her reactions of running away from the guests, and the tiny things that indicate her nervousness and her self-consciousness and her gaucherie are all so brilliant in the book that every woman who has read it has adored the girl and has understood her psychology. We have removed all the subtleties and substituted big, broad strokes."
Yeah.
And so Hitchcock back into the drawing board to make another version of the script, which was written in just under 2 months, shortly before shooting was done.
And notably, they had to again change the ending because of the Hays Code.
Yeah, that's the other thing
Which we should get into that. It'll possibly help us get into the sort of question of women in this and how things
And
work.
agency also, too.
So yeah, the big reveal being that Maxim de Winters was around for his wife's death. And
in the novel, I can read the part. So they're talking. Maxim, what are you saying? What are you trying to tell me? Her boat, they found it. The diver found it this afternoon. Yes, I know. You are thinking about the body, aren't you? The body the diver found in the cabin. Yes. It means she was not alone. It means there was somebody sailing with Rebecca at the time, and you have to find out who it is. That's it, isn't it, Maxim? No, you don't understand. I want to share this with you, darling, I said. I want to help you. There was no one with Rebecca. She was alone. I knelt there watching his face, watching his eyes. It's Rebecca's body lying there on the cabin floor. No, I said. No, the woman buried in the crypt is not Rebecca. It's the body of some unknown woman, unclaimed, belonging nowhere. There was never an accident. Rebecca was not drowned at all. I killed her. I shot Rebecca in the cottage in the cove. I carried her body to the cabin and took the boat out that night and sunk it there where they found it today. It's Rebecca who's lying dead there on the cabin floor. Will you look into my eyes and tell me that you love me now?
Right. So in the book and the 2020 film, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
It's delivered in a much more theatrical way.
In both of those, the version of events is Rebecca confronts Maxim de Winters, states, I'm going to have a baby with someone who's not you. You're going to have to raise it as your son, and you're a coward who can never divorce me. And Maxim de Winters shoots Rebecca, and then places her body on a boat and sinks the boat. In the Hitchcock, we'll play that presently.
Will you look into my eyes and tell me that you love me now?
Rebecca, and this, and this. Oh, it's true, isn't it?
You thought I loved Rebecca? You thought that? I hated her.
Maybe that lets you know where you're supposed to feel things.
Yep, and she's smiling.
Oh, I was carried away by her.
Yeah, that's
Enchanted
good
by her,
acting.
as everyone was. And when I was married, I was told I was the luckiest man in the world. When I looked down, ages afterwards it seemed, she was lying on the floor. She'd struck her head on a heavy piece of ship's tackle. I remember wondering why she was still smiling.
All right, so
yeah, in two of her versions, yeah, she comes to him about this child I'm gonna have, not yours, gonna inherit your name and house, and there's nothing you can do about it, and he shoots her. And then in the Hitchcock version, she says all that, and he gets real mad, hits her, nothing happens from the hit.
nope.
And then coincidentally, she falls on a big fucking iron anchor or something.
Yeah, a seaman's tackle that was large.
Even when I saw this, and this was not your reaction, but when I saw this, I was just like, oh, he killed her. Like, I was like, well, that's what a wife murderer says happens.
Yeah. And I took it at face value.
Yeah, and I didn't even, it didn't occur to me that that's not what the movie was saying until they then had a future scene where he confirmed it further. And I was like, oh, the movie wants me to actually believe this dumbass? Okay, sure. But yeah, it didn't click with me that obviously, yes, this is very classic Hays Code shit. Specifically, you can't have a murderer get away with murder and depict that in a movie.
There were 3 things here that the Production Code Office, an industry body administered by Joseph Breen that strictly policed the morality of films in major U.S. studios. In the final act of the novel, Maxim de Winter confesses to the narrator that he shot Rebecca to death after she taunted him. The discovery of Rebecca's body triggers an inquest, blah, 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 blah. We went over that. And Jack Farvel is a cousin and lover. The Production Code Office described this as a, quote, clear violation of the production code since it apparently justifies and condones murder. Selznick proceeded with the adaptation. Despite this warning, Breen's office rejected an initial script outlining 3 chief issues along with a long list of objectionable phrases to be excised, such as, quote, for God's sake, quote, you ass, and, quote, lovers. The 3 things are, 1, as now written, it is the story of a murderer who is permitted to go off scot-free. 2, the quite inescapable inference of sex perversion. And 3, the repeated references in the dialogue to the alleged illicit relationship between Farvel and the first Mrs. De Winter and the frequent references to the alleged illegitimate child-to-be.
Right. So I should actually clarify in that sense, if you do listen to the dialogue quite specifically, she's really talking about a hypothetical child she might have at some point. Yeah. She never tells him that she is pregnant, as she does in the book and the other movie adaptation. But yeah, the Hays Code was essentially the studio's self-regulation between the 1930s and 1960s when it got replaced with your movie ratings you have today, where they just kind of outright ban certain things. And the whole notion of people getting away with crimes is a somewhat infamous one because it really did limit the way scripts could be written.
The sex perversion wasn't just fucking his cousin. It was the reference to an implied lesbian attraction felt by Mrs. Danvers to Rebecca. Breen, the production code guy, complained of the impropriety of Mrs. Danvers' description of Rebecca's physical attributes and her handling of various garments, particularly the nightgown. I remember this when she was like, here, check out her underpants. She implied that she really liked to touch the underpants of Rebecca.
Okay, so we have like kind of a diverging path of the different things we can talk about with this movie. On the one hand, yeah, you have the place of this as a feminist or a foil of feminism or a commentary on the relations of men and women in that sort of a context. And then in number 2, you have the apparently much remarked upon homoeroticism implicit in the story.
So to bring it finally to Fisher, who wrote a K-Punk article that references the movie, No Promises But, from June 9th, 2007. It mentions the queer interpretations of the movie and novel as this uncanniness at the intersection of different genres of horror.
And for the record, when Fisher wrote this, by his own admission, he had only seen the Hitchcock movie. He had not read the novel, and the 2021 was not out.
So here's a quote from Fisher about this. Rebecca, a film that haunts and is haunted perhaps most of all by Jane Eyre, its ancestor doppelganger. Rebecca, which like Jane Eyre and many of Highsmith's novels, he goes on to mention The Talented Mr. Ripley, achieves uncanny, or what would be better to say queer, effects without any recourse to the supernatural. A question I want to raise but can't answer yet: what is the relationship of the queer to the uncanny and the weird? Rebecca, which can only be placed in the interstices of genre, Du Maurier denied it was a romance, but what else is it? This unromance, which, unlike the classic romance novel, begins, not ends with marriage. First there is a sham marriage, symbolically mandated but existentially and affectively a charade. Then there is the true marriage, with the couple destituted, dispossessed of the symbolic property. Manderley, a near reversal, or better, a skewing of Jane Eyre, in which Jane and Rochester, governess and master, first of all, live as if husband and wife, without symbolic mandate and without sex, and can only be officially married only after Thornfield has burned down. In the case of Jane Eyre, the other woman has to be killed before the marriage can occur. In this case, in the case of Rebecca, the other woman, Rebecca herself, blights the marriage by already being dead. But isn't Rebecca synthomosexual, as a brilliant piece on Demure in the Independent last month suggested? And so then he quotes at length the Independent article, which raises this question of the queerness to Rebecca's characterization.
Yeah, and actually, I guess it really isn't two directions, because they are very interrelated, because this can be seen as a story of a overbearing, possessive husband who marries a free-spirited, cosmopolitan, some might say urban socialite woman of lesbianic persuasions, and then murders her for embarrassing him, is sort of a pretty valid interpretation.
Well, cuckolding him from the beginning and making him feel inadequate, and more or less the murder seems to be this pent-up resentment that he has over the years. As he says in the movie version, like, I only found out that she was philandering with all these people in London 6 days after the marriage, and she was like, what are you gonna do? Divorce me and let me take all my money and then live out my dream life without you? No, he wasn't gonna do that, because he loved his money.
And also, this is him describing this after the fact as well, in the ways that, you know, are most...
a murderer would describe.
Right, the way a man who murdered his wife and is trying to justify it would describe this. So, yeah, this can be read as a pretty classic story like that, of just a free-spirited woman who actually had a quite overbearing and abusive husband who eventually killed her, and also perhaps she was, as gets speculated by critics today, having same-sex relationships, specifically as it's alluded to with Mrs. Danvers, but also going to London and seeing people in her flat there. Gets to be a thing that seems to have been, really tamped down in the Hitchcock version, but is present elsewhere and gets expanded and remarked upon. You mentioned that there's a lot of novelists today who, almost as an exercise, have written Rebecca from Rebecca's standpoint with essentially that thesis.
Yeah, that it's a feminist triumph that she's married this rich man and then lives out an unalienated life of sexual adventure.
Yeah.
Rebecca, brought to the screen with all the warmth and emotion that made millions of readers acclaim Daphne du Maurier's bestseller as the most exciting love story of our time.